there's a lot of misconceptions. Hay fever needs to have nasal symptoms. Often people will have just eye symptoms, and often that is just by contact. Even for you, if you don't have hay fever, if the pollen count is high and it goes into your eyes, it will affect your eyes. But that is not a sign of an allergy. It's a sign of a contact reaction. So people need to understand: is it my nose being affected? Am I sneezing? Is my nose itchy? The discharge is very important. Is it a clear discharge? Because if it is a clear discharge, yes, it's what we call rhinitis, either being allergic or non-allergic rhinitis. But if it is not a clear discharge, then we're talking about an infection. So differentiating between, is this rhinitis, so an inflammation of your nose or not? And then with rhinitis, there's also something called non-allergic rhinitis. The treatment for that is going to be exactly the same as for hay fever, so the allergic rhinitis. But see, if you're in doubt, ask your GP or ask your GP to refer to an allergist, and this is easy to understand which one it is. Also, what time of the year do you have this? Because very often the time of the year can also tell me which pollen it is. If you're really having an allergic reaction, what pollen it is. So it's easy to get there. Just ask questions.
And which months tend to be the worst then? Is May a particularly bad one, or is this just the start of it?
The start of hay fever is in January, because the pollen season, the tree pollen season, starts in January. So actually we have an interesting calendar with several different species of trees and several different species of grasses, and when they start pollinizing. As you're mentioning, May is actually a very tricky one, because is when you start to go over the decline in the tree pollen season and the start of the grass pollen season. So you have an overlap of the two. So from May onwards, a lot of people are going mostly to suffer from grass pollen season, with a peak around June.
Josie, what I love about this already is that you're, of course, a medical man. You look at science, but all the referencing to trees and different types of trees. It's a reminder that
Yeah.
this is a constant balance between humans interacting with nature and getting on with their lives, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And if you can imagine, now that the sun is starting to come out, the weather is getting warmer, and people like to go on their walks along the parks and the forests and all that, the exposure is going to be even worse than on the beginning. So in January, when it is cold and rainy and damp, people like to stay home. They don't like to go away. But also, when it is raining, all the pollen is washed away. So you're not going to have any seasons, despite being on a pollen season. So you need to have this dry, hot, windy type of weather for you to start having symptoms. And of course, go for your walks with your dog or with just a family, and you're going to see things getting even worse. If someone has hay fever symptoms, can they identify which things they are affected by? So is it going to a certain park or a certain forest in which there's more abundance of a certain type of pollen or certain type of tree? Then of course, if there's a direct relationship, avoid it. So it is what we call control the environment, avoid the allergens, and basically by decreasing the exposure to that type of tree or pollen that you think that you're suffering from. A lot of people are going to suffer with grass, especially when you see that your neighbor is mowing the lawn and suddenly you start sneezing. Okay, you know what it is. It's grass pollen.
Yeah, don't moan
So
about
avoid it.
don't moan about the noise. Think about the pollen that they're throwing up. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, and ask your partner or someone else to go and mow the lawn and go away. less work for you. The other thing is, so if you have significant problems even at home, there's one thing called HEPA filters. So HEPA, or HGPA, means high efficiency particulate air filter. So those ones will remove most of the airborne allergens. And that having something like that at home will help significantly with indoor symptoms. Of course, indoor as well, vacuum the floor more frequently. And especially if you have carpets, you need to do it more often. And again, go for a vacuum cleaner that also has a HGPA filter, again for the same principle. Otherwise, if it is not a filter like that, as you're vacuuming, all the pollen is going to go into the air and actually going to have even worse symptoms.
Jose,
So
is
try
it something that you should invest in? Is it buy cheap, buy twice, or not necessarily in terms of getting the right kind of kit?
it is investing money on it. Also, because in this case, the cheap and buy twice that you're talking about will not have AGPA filters, and the symptoms are going to get worse. So eventually, you're going to spend so much money on medication and so much time spending time at home because you cannot either go to school or to work. Invest the money because it will be easily compensated. And nowadays, because there's so many more companies producing filters, both for vacuum cleaners and for air filters at home, the prices have decreased. They're still going to be a little bit higher than the normal thing, but the prices have decreased, so it's really worth it to invest on that one. Another thing associated with this is it windy? If it is windy and you start opening your windows to aerate your place, of course, a lot of pollen is going to go inside. So close the windows, close your doors as much as possible when it is very windy inside, and try to prevent the pollen from coming inside. So basically, the control of the environment is more focused on this. As the symptoms start with your nose, then you need to tackle it. So how do you tackle it? Is a steroid nasal spray. That is the most important medication to control hay fever symptoms, steroid nasal spray. And the best steroid nasal sprays are the ones that are used once a day only, opposite to the ones that you buy over the counter that normally are twice a day. So go for the once a day, and your GP normally can tell you which one it is. So start with that. Afterwards, there's what we call rescue medications. Often people that have, so the nasal symptoms will have eye symptoms, but also remember we spoke about earlier about sometimes your eyes can get affected without having hay fever. Eye drops. So control it with eye drops. And there's eye drops that have antihistamines are excellent to control this. So that will be your first rescue medication after the steroid nasal spray. Your next rescue medication, and this is particularly important for the days in which the pollen count is higher, then go for something that is a nasal spray as well, but this is an antihistamine nasal spray. This normally will sting on your nose and tell you if it goes into your mouth, it's not going to taste nice. So have a glass of water or something else that you can drink nearby, especially if you're in the park or the beer garden, and use it. So those are the main ones. Lastly, antihistamines. People tend to take antihistamines to control symptoms, and that tends to be the first choice. For me, that is the fourth choice, never the first one. And namely, an antihistamine like cetirizine is going to be the most appropriate one to control the symptoms.
And it takes quite a bit of confidence to question GP's advice. So, if someone listening after your advice, Josie, goes to the GP and says, "Oh, I've heard this way round might be best," is that all right? Because it's not a very English thing to do. I don't know what the Portuguese are like, but we're sometimes a bit scared of GPs. No, I don't know what you've heard, but go with this, and they'll be saying, "Hang on a minute, we had allergy expert Jose Costa on the radio, and I don't want any sort of ding dong." So, how forceful should you be if you're questioning advice from GPs?
Well, there's two things. If a GP assesses you and thinks, no, what you need is this medication and not that medication, you can question. You can ask for a second opinion as well. Some people go and try, and eventually the medication is not going to work, and they go back to their GP. But look, if they listen to this, and I'm often teaching, giving lectures to GPs about the best management for hay fever and other allergic conditions, and I always focus on this. But unfortunately, not primary healthcare practitioners know about all that. So sometimes just do question, in a gentle way, of course, not in a forceful way. Just question it and say, look, I've used or I've heard someone using this and it works better. Why can I not try? Yeah, ask. It is entitled to do. Immunotherapy, both sublingual and subcutaneous, so meaning that the medication goes under your tongue. In the case of subcutaneous is by injection. Personally, I use sublingual because it's easily managed without any pain, can be done at home. And this immunotherapy has been used now for over 30, 40 years with a massive improvement to people's qualities of life. One thing that people need to know is that if you plan on going on this journey of immunotherapy, you need to commit yourself for a 3-year treatment. But I can tell you that after this 3-year treatment, your tolerance of symptoms or your reversal of symptoms will last for decades, literally over 20 to 30 years that you're going to have basically symptom free. And what is the immunotherapy? So basically, we identify what the pollen is that you are allergic to. And then we select a particular either liquid or tablet that you will take every single day under your tongue. This tablet will contain the pollen that you are allergic to, but it is purified in a lower dose, and we're going to build up tolerance on your immune system until, often on my patients, 3 to 4 months after the treatment is started, they already seen a significant change in symptoms.
Right.
And not just change in symptoms, but you're going to see that actually I don't need to use this medication as often as I used to, which is common. It is very, very common to see.
So a real game changer. I don't want to conflate the two conditions because, of course, they've got nothing to do with each other. But in terms of, the impact this might have, people who've suffered from bad eyesight in the past, when everyone was getting laser surgery, all of a sudden there was a different way forward that could give long-term benefits.
Definitely, because this, as science evolves and medicine needs to evolve with science and with research, we're finding this more and more often, things that we can do. So for you to have an idea, roughly about 30 years ago, we only did injections. And the number of pollens that we used to do was minimal. Nowadays, we can do immunotherapy for pollens, being them grass pollens or tree pollens, to house dust mites, to cats, dogs, bees, wasps, so on and so forth. There's so many things that we can do immunotherapy for, and it is highly successful, and is, as you say, is life-changing, is definitely life-changing, and it is worth trying. If you reacted to a certain fruit or a certain vegetable, and you go and cook it or bake it mainly, and the symptoms go away, you've made your own diagnosis. So this is almost a home kit. You can do your home diagnosis. If you have that and the symptoms go away, this is a pollen fruit syndrome. What is interesting about this is that many years ago, and remember yesterday we were talking about immunotherapy. Immunotherapy, we considered that did not have an impact on pollen fruit syndrome. Nowadays, there's more and more evidence showing that it is related to this. So again, immunotherapy is important there. So now, if you are allergic to one fruit or one vegetable, does it mean that you're going to be allergic to all the other ones, or having the reaction, the pollen fruit syndrome, to all the other ones? No, you can just have one or two and nothing else. So there's a high variation from person to person to which things you're going to be reacting to. But remember, it's always raw fruit or vegetable. So cook it, the symptoms go away, brilliant. If the symptoms do not go away, even if cooked, then you need to be seen by an allergist, because we need to do something a bit more particular called prick-to-prick tests, so we can identify if you're really allergic to that or not. So it's something that a lot of people suffer from, and they should keep their eyes open or their mouth closed on this one.
Now, listen, also, before I let you go and see your patients, I mentioned earlier, I don't think I've ever suffered from hay fever or any sort of big allergic reaction. Nobody else in my family has, apart from my youngest Archie is convinced that he's allergic to the cat. And you must hear this quite often about, I'm allergic to the pet. And he almost kind of carries out his own little experiments by going closer to Pablo and then further away from Pablo. How common is it for one member of a family and not all the others to be allergic to one of their pets?
It is very common. So this is as bad as playing in a lottery. It is a matter of chance. You can have an entire family without any allergies whatsoever, and then suddenly you can have a child with plenty of them. So if he comes close to the cat and he starts having symptoms, it would be worth trying. It would be worth testing him. Now, remember one thing, and importantly for anyone that thinks that they are allergic to any pets, the allergy to a pet is not on the hair. The hair does not cause an allergic reaction. But the problem is what the hair can carry. So the main thing on cats that causes an allergy is saliva. And of course, as you know, cats are grooming themselves all the time. So their hair, their fur, is going to be completely covered on saliva. And that's why you have an allergic reaction. Okay, so when we test, actually, we test for the components on saliva. So if your child is having reactions to your cat, Ben, take him to see an allergist, and he can test to see if it is allergic to the cat or not. And then you need to start thinking about what am I going to do with the cat?
Or the child.
Yes.